Hey everyone, welcome to Patriot or Soapbox, where I give you my commentary on the news today as reported by the Wall Street Journal. First up, this picture is from Hong Kong, and specifically at Polytechnic University, because early this morning, apparently they early enough to where they could fit in today's paper, there was a pretty big protest down at that campus and a big fight broke out between the cops and between student protesters. So the cops brought down all their military-style vehicles and whatnot. Protesters burned several of the vehicles with fire and oil because they had oil cans, bows and arrows, Molotov cocktails, a bunch of other primitive weaponry like slingshots and catapults to fight back against the police. Now, the protesters have been waving American flags for a while during the protests, and the question arises, therefore, like, are they willing to have U.S. intervention? I mean, and even if they are, should the U.S. intervene? I say maybe and no in that order. Maybe just because they're waving the American flag doesn't mean they want an intervention. Maybe they just want our ideals. Maybe they're showing support for like the stuff that America believes in. And the second thing, there's no way that a U.S. intervention in Hong Kong is gonna end well. For starters, it's an island. Even though it's an island, it's right next to China. It's a major financial center. China's not going to want to let that go. And it was a British colony, so, I mean, the British managed to keep it away from China, but that was before. But now that the British have let it go, like, and it's been independent it's been part of China, or at least a semi-autonomous part of China for a few decades, for 2 or 3 decades now. So, yeah, they're not going to give it up. Imagine it this way. Like, imagine if, because Hong Kong's an island in the sense that Manhattan is. Because, it's super close to the mainland, but still technically an island. So imagine it's like New York. Big financial center, island, still very close to a major country. Would China intervene if Manhattan started protesting, waving Chinese flags, wanting to be more independent of the United States government, maybe be fully autonomous? Of course China wouldn't. It's right next to the U.S. The U.S. would easily would immediately be provoked to wrath against China if they intervened. Same thing in Hong Kong. Trump would be stupid to intervene in Hong Kong with military forces. And besides, he's not an interventionist kind of guy. I don't think he has his heart set on attacking going to Hong Kong anytime soon. Next up, John Bel Edwards, the Democratic governor of Louisiana, was declared the winner of his gubernatorial race this weekend, even though Trump endorsed the other guy. What makes Edwards so rare is that he's the only Democratic governor in the Deep South, which almost contradicts the notion of the factors one there. It all contradicts the notion of the whole Southern strategy, which, for those of you who don't know, it's the Democrats' excuse for losing the South, although they paint it as the reason why Republicans are racist. So the story goes that Nixon started pandering to white racists after the Civil Rights Act, and white racists in the South decided to go along with the Republican Party, and now Republicans are racist, yada yada yada. First thing that's wrong with that: why would the racists join the party that told them to not be racist anymore? The Republicans who got all the Civil Rights Acts and amendments passed to the Constitution, to the legal code. So it would make almost zero sense for them to join the party that just took away their way of maintaining control, right? That'd be dumb. And it took a very long time for the South actually to become a Republican voting bloc. In fact, as late as the election of George Bush Sr., it was a Democratic bloc. I mean, there's obviously breaks in that, South voted Republican for Nixon and Reagan, or Nixon's second term, and then Reagan's second term. But that was because but pretty much the entire country did. It was landslide victory for Nixon won a bulk of the states in the U.S. and the only state that Reagan didn't win was Minnesota, and D.C., but D.C. is not a state, but yeah, Minnesota and D.C. were the only places with electoral votes that Reagan didn't win, and that's because D.C.'s voted Democrat since it was allowed to vote for the first time in the 60s, and Minnesota was the home of Walter Mondale, Reagan's opponent. So yeah, the other reason why Republicans are, and the reason why they're Republicans in the South now, it's because the Republican Party started aligning more with their interests once the Democrats ditched the South to hang out on the coasts. Or when I say Democrats, in that case, I mean the Democratic Party leaders and the Democrats in the South, like the ordinary people, were like, "Hey, what the heck? You guys just ditched us." So yeah, they're not racist per se. It's just that Democrats ditched them and they found a home in the Republican Party. Like, all right, fine, let's go with the other guys. Next up, we have an article about Elisa Marie Stefanik, a Republican moderate from New York, and you got to be a moderate and agree with Democrats if you want to be a Republican from New York who serves in office, and that's actually what she does. Like, for starters, she opposed post-Trump Syria withdrawal, post pulling out of the climate agreement, support the Equality Act, which would extend like the protections against discrimination to LGBTQ people. But now she decided to actually go against impeachment, which solicited cheers from her Republican colleagues for obvious reasons, and also a little bit of surprise given her track record. But hey, you know, apparently she values a functioning government over partisan politics, which is absolutely great. Next up, we go to the op-ed section and we find that an article entitled "Old Age Will Put China to Rest" about how now, or in 2040, 21% of China's population will be retirees. And now retirees, when we hear them, we usually think 65 plus grounded in the US, right? Well, not so in China. It's 60 for men, or 60 and up for men, 55 and up for women. And given that, and that China has one of the longest, if not the longest life expectancies in the world, that's a recipe for disaster. I mean, the first child policy worked in stopping a whole lot of kids from being born, but it didn't prevent the people who are already alive from growing old and those kids having to support them. So now with a fifth of the population being retirees, that doesn't mean like the remaining 4/5 is going to be the workforce, because a lot of those are still children and whatnot. But still, going to be a disaster for China as they figure out how to pay for supporting all these people. This article mentions that Japan had a similar problem in 2015 because their 65 and older crowd reached 26%, so 1/4, not 1/5 of the population. Again, this was in 2015. But Japan got rich before it got old. China's getting old before it gets rich. And if that happens, then things are not going to go well. So, I mean, pretty much like no way to, like, for me to definitely predict what's going to happen, but probably going to be riots, mass starvation, maybe the mass import of workers. Maybe China will start accepting refugees to support their population. Who knows? Next up, there's an article debunking the Mexico story about Evo Morales, the former president of Bolivia, being the victim in the whole Bolivia issue. So Mexico's state decided to grant asylum to Morales after he fled, but but a lot of people, including the author of this op-ed, disagree with the notion that Morales is the victim. For starters, he's pretty much Hugo Chavez of Central South America instead of Northern South America. Chavez, dictator of Venezuela, used a commodity boom, in this case oil, to fuel his authoritarian Marxist state. When that didn't go well, he started using force to control the people, blah, blah, blah. Didn't go well. You know the story. Morales is pretty similar, except in his case, the country is Bolivia, and the commodity is coca, which is where we get crack cocaine from. And, America apparently has an insatiable appetite for drugs, and so, it just like as for oil. And so he made, initially Bolivia was made, in this case, a narco state, which made him pretty rich, but that was sort of a front for, or really an excuse for his Marxist state. Like, Chavez said, we'll split the oil profits among the people. But Morales is like, we'll split the crack profits among the people. And yeah, drugs are a big boost to Latin America's economy. But first of all, drugs are bad for you anyway, and so there's been pushback against this. And second, come on, dictatorship. It's Marxism. Things are not going to go well. And actually, about the whole election fraud thing, it was fraudulent in his favor. Because in 2016, there was a referendum on whether he should be allowed to run for a fourth term. Bolivia voted no. But he started to run anyway. And then the Organization of American States decided, which I think includes pretty much every country in North and South America, they declared the election fraudulent. The military said they wouldn't intervene in protests on Morales' side, and he fled to Mexico. So yeah, and he also and then he also trampled on the rights of indigenous people, because of course he did. It's the government in Latin America. The governments in America have a tendency to trample the indigenous people, from the United States to Brazil to here, or to there in Bolivia. So yeah, he ain't a victim. And Bernie Sanders, because he wants to tax everything, wants to tax financial transactions, which is just another thing that will inevitably end up hurting the middle class more than the rich, because as more than half of Americans own stocks, and either directly or in mutual funds. So taxing financial transactions in the stock market, the stock market's not the domain of the rich only. Again, more than half Americans have have stocks somewhere or another. So taxing stocks is only going to hurt the people that he's actually trying to help. Oh, the irony, right? And then finally, we have an article entitled "Cuomo's Carbon Casualties." Cuomo's the guy that who's the reason why I'm currently using Russian natural gas to heat my room right now. So Cuomo has banned fracking and pipelines in New York, even though there's a bunch of natural gas there, and in Pennsylvania, which means no new pipelines go through there, which means that Massachusetts is still, because pipelines from other natural gas rich places like Pennsylvania would have to go through New York to get to New England, we have to import Russian gas. Guess where I live? New England. So yeah, I have to import Russian gas. I don't import it. The gas companies do. National Grid, I think, does. Maybe someone else ships it in. The National Grid buys it. Regardless, I'm still using Russian gas because of Cuomo's idiocy. And then inevitably, whenever something goes wrong, just like in California, Governor Newsom's fire, blame PG&E, yeah, blame business, even though his policies created the mess. Same with Cuomo. He prevents gas companies from, in his case, Con Ed, from having adequate supplies of gas for people. Guess what happens? There's not enough gas to heat houses. Guess who Cuomo blames? Con Ed. Technically, it's Con Ed who has the shortage, but it's a shortage that would be alleviated if Cuomo would just allow fracking and pipelines. It is not hard to figure out. I mean, when people say it, it's really an insult to construction workers when people say that fracking's and pipelines are gonna ruin drinking water. Not if you build it properly. You're saying construction workers and manufacturers suck at their job? If state laws and regulations didn't allow for easy maintenance of pipes, or for pipes to be built correctly in the first place, then they don't leak. They won't leak into the water. So you have a concrete or metal tube, and everything's fine, as long as rules allow for it to be easily maintained. There's no problem. And on that note of Cuomo's idiocy, I'm gonna stop there. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and to get more great daily content from Patriot or Soapbox, everyone.